to the
Right,
Kinneret.
right. That's all it gives me right now is this little section. Ah, all right, this is good. I can deal with this. Okay. This is when Shoftim starts. Let's quickly do an overview of what Shoftim is all about. And we're going to do through half of it right now.
All right. I see the note here.
The parsha starts with how the Jews came into Canaan and conquered. And it quickly repeats some of the sections that they have. Now, the main problem during the time of the Shoftim is for the couple hundred of years that we're talking about 300-400 years altogether. As a matter of fact, we showed Yeshua to here. We showed that the Jews got, you see it changed now to the list of the Shoftim?
Yes.
Okay. Yeshua took over 40 years after Moshe died. So that was the year 1313 before the Common Era. 1,300 years before approximately the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash is when Moshe died and Yehoshua took over. So then you had a period here of Yehoshua of about 30 years. Then you had the Zakanim for a few years, 1445 to 1228. So that was 15, 20 years. And then you had the period of the Shoftim. The main problem with the Jews at that time, besides not having a leader, is that they did not follow the directions under Yehoshua to do everything they were supposed to do before he died. They were told you come into the land and you kill everybody who's there. And they didn't. In each case, the Shvatim, even based on the sections that they had, did not completely take care of what they were supposed to take care of. Let me just, can I do an edit here? Can I actually draw? Wow, cute. Okay. Let's see.
Isaac, I have a question.
Yes.
Who told them to kill all the people? Where was that?
Moshe in the Chumash.
Okay.
They were told you're going to meet the 7 nations and you're supposed to basically wipe them out. Now they did
in plain Hebrew, that really is what is said. Is to
in plain Hebrew, that was pretty much it. They were given a choice. You could either leave.
Okay.
No, it wasn't just going in a wholesale slaughter.
That's why I'm asking. Okay.
You approach each one. If they want to leave, whatever, you can make peace with them. But basically, they're supposed to be out because being there creates a problem.
Yeah.
Mostly was the Canaanite.
During the period of the Shoftim, for example, you can look, even the Navi tells you right out at the beginning. Yehuda came up to start the battles. They waged war. Yes.
I think the order was for Canaanites, wasn't it?
Well, that was just what to tell you. Part of it was the Canaanites. Part of it was the Amaleki. Part of it was Moab. Part of it was the Pelishtim. For instance, the Navi says that Menashe did not clean out its area. Let's look at what we have up here. Here you have Asher up on top.
Yeah.
Then you had Naphtali underneath it. To the left, you had Zevulun and Yisachar. Remember, Yisachar were the ones that learned, and Zevulun were the ones that
The boats.
the trade, right? They
Yeah.
made a deal between themselves. Yisachar would do the learning, Zevulun would do the trade, and they would support them going forward. So here you see Zevulun is along the coast. It makes sense. Yisachar was more inland. Menashe, you have, do you see a hand moving on the screen when I do this?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Baruch Hashem. Menashe,
Was half and half.
right. Half is here, half is here, and this is the Yarden. This is the Jordan River. So when we learn that before they came in, the last thing was that the tribe of Reuven, let me just see where I had it marked here, because I tried to highlight some of these. Reuven was down here. Reuven was down here. Gad was here. And Chatzi Shevet Menashe.
Yeah.
Half of Menashe was here. Half of Menashe was in Eretz Yisrael itself. You had Binyamin by Yerichai, and you had Yehuda. Whoops. Yehuda was a little bit more, Dan was over here. Yehuda was this whole area over here. So interesting, you have Binyamin on top, you have Yehuda underneath them when it comes to Yerushalayim. Where was the border between the two?
By the Beit HaMikdash.
In the middle of the Beis HaMikdash, by the Mizbeach HaChitzon. That half and half, the whole, and we can do a separate class just on that, split Yerushalayim. But now you can see where Binyamin was on top, Yehuda was underneath, and this was the borderline between their two. Then you have Dan. What was the symbol of Dan on the flags? Ships. They were along the Mediterranean, the richest area for ship faring and to go around to other countries. So that works out.
I thought Danny, he done Nachash Alayderech.
Yes, Dan, you're right. There was the snake was the symbol on the flag, but in terms of, some of them have the ships, but their bracha was that they went out as a ship-faring country. Now, the difference is this. Down here, you see Philistia. So these were the Pelishtim that were making trouble for them. Down here, south of Beersheba, were the Amaleki. Amalek is where they were battling them over here. Down here, oh, it even says Moab. You had the Moabites. Going further up on this side of the Jordan, let's see what my notes say. Aramean. The Arameans were up here. And then you still had Chiti and Yevusi and some of the other previous countries that were, and nations that were in the middle. The problem was that the Jews got tired of war, basically. So they did not clear out the nations that they were supposed to on the inside of the country. And they were having problems. Dan had problems with the Amoraim that were forcing them into the mountains. The Kanani, the Chiti, the Amori, the Prizi, the Chivi, the Yevusi. These nations were left pretty much by the Jews, and worse, they simply absorbed them into, they moved into the country. They took over the country, but basically they let them all live there. And the Pasuk even says their sons and daughters intermarried. They absorbed them into their culture. They therefore left a lot of the Avodah Zarah and practices that were being practiced, and they picked up the local culture. Instead of driving them out and redoing the culture, they basically simply took it over. And there was no strong leader above the Jews in terms of giving them chizuk and a direction in terms of you should do this, or you should do that. You didn't have anybody like that. Therefore, you had a problem of who was going to lead them and what were they going to do. So Shoftim, we're going to cover today, I think, up through Devorah, maybe Gideon. And tomorrow, I think we can cover the rest because there's more interesting things going on at the end. But I want you to be aware of the overall issue and the constant problem that was going on during the period of the Shoftim for those 400 years, is that you had the Mishkan. The Mishkan was either in Shiloh or until it got to over there. So you had the Kohanim taking care there. None of the Kohanim asserted themselves in terms of leading the nation itself. The people were doing whatever they wanted to do. And they were involved in Avodah Zarah. They were involved in intermarriage. They were involved in bringing the Kanani culture, not just Kanani, but all these other nations, cultures into their homes rather than driving them out. They basically lived the way we live now. I mean, except they were in charge. But in terms of living amongst different nations, in terms of intermarriage between them, I can't say who was much better. So most of these Shoftim, all the Sefer of Shoftim does is it will give you a specific, oh, wait a minute, did I lock anybody out? No, I forgot to look. I'm sorry. They gave a specific event, or the shofet was able to take care of a problem with a particular miracle or a particular situation. But there was no long-lasting heritage that any one of them left. We start talking about Osniel ben Kenaz. Kenaz was the younger brother of Kalev. Remember Kalev ben Yefuna? He was the only of the original spies, besides Yehoshua, who survived. So his brother's son became the first shofet. We're told nothing really about him, except that he was first and that he took care of things. The next one was Ehud ben Gera. And here they tell us a very, very interesting story. Whoever was here Friday, I'm not going to replace the whole thing that we did then, but we talked about how the problem was that the Moabites under Eglon, the king of Moab, were torturing them, troubling them, making problems for them. Ehud had a withered right hand. I don't know what that exactly means, but obviously that wouldn't be that he couldn't use it. He went to Eglon. And basically, while they were upstairs in Eglon's private room or whatever was going on there, Ehud said to him, well, let's start from the beginning. What Ehud did is the Navi tells us, Eglon prepared a knife that was an amma long. So it's about 2.5 feet long with a hilt. And it was two-sided. It was obviously very sharp on both sides. Ehud hid that knife strapped to his thigh. Must have been a big guy for him to bend his knee and not hurt himself. He went up to Eglon, the king, and said, I have a message from God. Eglon asked everybody to leave the room, leaned forward, and Ehud took this 3-foot knife and stabbed him with it. The pasuk tells us that Eglon was so fat that the knife went in and the hilt disappeared in his body. So that I said, for anybody that saw the Star Wars movies, I wonder if they didn't get Jabba the Hutt, one of the characters in the movie, from Shoftim, because Jabba was this huge mass of something, fatness. But that's how Ehud killed Eglon. He then jumped out the window. Eglon's troops came in through the door. They didn't realize he was dead. And then they came in. He wasn't moving. He said the knife was totally buried in him. They didn't even see the knife. And Ehud left. The next one, and that's all we really are told. You can sometimes get a few sentences. It's all that Shoftim gives us about some of these guys. Then you had Shamgar. Shamgar is totaled up in 2 psukim, just to give you an idea of how short they may have. Gimel Lamed. Can't be stopped. Yacharov, the pasuk tells us in Perik Gimel, Yacharov, and after him, meaning after Ehud. Ehud was there for 80 years, was the period of Ehud being the shofet. Again, Ehud didn't rule over them, but he was considered the judge. They used to come to him for questions. Then the pasuk says, after Ehud, let's see, Vatishkat B'Haaretz Shmoinim Shana, that Ehud was taking, took over the land for 80 years. And the land was tranquil for 80 years. The Acharov, and after him, Hoya Shamgar ben Ana. Shamgar was the next shofet. Vayach es Pelishtim, and he struck the Pelishtim. Sheish Meyos ish, 600 men. Milmad Habakar, with a cattle goad. So all the pasuk tells you about him. Vayisha Gamhu es Israel, and he also saved Israel. So the entire story of Shamgar is in a total of 2 psukim. And all we are chosen to be told is that he killed 600 men with a cattle prod. Then the pasuk says, "Vayusifu b'nei Yisrael lasos hara b'einei Hashem," and the Jews were still doing the wrong thing. V'ahor meis, and
he died.
Let me see who died. And then once Ehud died, then Hashem delivered them into the hand of Yabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Chazor. And the general of his army was Sisera, who dwelt in Charoses Golim. The children of Israel cried out to Hashem, for Sisera had 900 iron chariots, and he oppressed the children of Israel forcefully for 20 years. So again, we're in a period where no leader, this evil general Sisera from the Pelishtim, 900 chariots. So you're probably talking about at least 3 men per chariot in terms of labor. So you're dealing with at least 1,800 troops coming in and torturing people. Then the Navi tells us that there was a woman called Dvorah. And Dvorah was a prophetess. Between Ramah and Bethel at the mountain of Ephraim. So we said before, where the mountains of Ephraim were, Zebulun,
Ephraim.
Did I miss the years? Ephraim is here in the center. This was the area of where Devorah was. The wife of Lapidot, renowned as a prophetess. So she already had a reputation as being a Neviah, a female prophet. And she, in the midst of all of the sin that was going on, idolatry, and most of these idolatrous practices involved sexual activity of one kind or another. She remained true to God and his word, and she was recognized as a judge by the whole nation. The main thing she was known for is that she used to sit under a palm tree and spoke words of advice, warning, and judgment. She listened to people, and then she sent for Barak, the son of Avinoam. Barak accepted, and she agreed, Dvorah agreed to accompany him. Sisera learned of Barak's approach and prepared his army to battle against the Jews. But in the beginning, the Canaanites had the upper hand, but Hashem threw Sisera's army into general confusion, basically causing the terrified warriors to start fighting against each other and fleeing in all different directions. Sisera saw that his troops were just going crazy and leaving in all directions, and he tried to find a place to hide. There was a guy, Hever, the Kenite, wasn't a Jew, who was a descendant of Yisro, the father-in-law of Moshe. Hever was on good terms with Yabin, the king of Chazar, and Sisera felt he could sneak into his tent and hide until he found better refuge. So he went to Hever's house. We are taught that Yael, Hever's wife, offered to hide him until the Jewish armies would pass. Exhausted, Sisera went in. She fed him. He went into a heavy slumber. Yael decided to make Sisera pay for all his crimes against the Jews. She basically took a tent post, put it by his temple as he was sleeping, and drove the nail through his head, killing him. In the meantime, Barak had continued his pursuit of Sisera. He came to Hever's house. Yael came out to meet him and says, "Come, I'll show you the man that you're looking for." She brought him into the tent, and there he was dead. Devorah wrote a beautiful shir. As a matter of fact, the rabbis say that the two most beautiful shir songs that are written in the Torah was Moshe when he crossed the Yarden. When he crossed the Reed Sea. When the Jews first came out of Mitzrayim, Oz Yasher Moshe Uvnei Yisrael. And then in this volume of the Navi, in Shoftim, Perek is Vatoshar Devorah Uvarak ben Avinoam. The two of them sang a song thanking Hashem and acknowledging that Hashem was the one who beat the Pelishtim and beat Sisera. Just trying to find where.
Isaac, can you tell me the names, the two names of the two songs, please?
Well, you have Uz Yashir, which was the shir of Moshe, and the second was the shir of Devorah,
Okay,
the song that Devorah does, which is Perek Hey, the fifth Perek, the fifth chapter in Shoftim, is her song. And very much, the one thing that immediately, I don't have an image of it to show you, except I can show it to you this way. In the Chumash, instead of having regular text, as it were, the text is, can you see it or not? The text is broken up in like 3 columns, practically.
yes.
A few words. You have the right column, then you have the center column, and you have the left column with
Okay,
alternating
I
text.
only see the map. I don't see any columns.
I'm
he,
holding it up to the screen. Look at my picture.
right,
You see me?
No,
No.
You normally
wait
see
a
me.
minute. I'll open it. Wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay. So this, the same way you have Uz Yashir in the Chumash, any of the Shirot, Hazinu also has columns like that,
wow,
where Moshe sings, and actually it's a prophecy and it's a rebuke, but it's put in the language of a song, because even the rebukes we don't look at as anything negative. It's something to help us get stronger. The one thing about Judaism is you're never, ever discarded. There's no such thing as too late. If you make a sincere effort to return, you are accepted back immediately if it's sincere. The problem is, a lot of people play the game of, well, I'll just, if I say this and I'll look. We're talking about sincerity. Sincere tshuva not only erases the negative that you did, but with proper thought, proper reflection, proper charata, you actually turn the negative into a positive because you walk away from the experience. That's why there's an old saying the rabbis say that in a place where a Baal Tshuva stands, tzaddikim cannot reach. That a Baal Tshuva, somebody who sincerely regrets, goes through all steps, the 5 steps of tshuva, and sincerely regrets, promises or, not promises, but commits himself to not do it again, and then is faced with the same situation and successfully overcomes the urge to do it, is considered higher than a tzaddik who never sinned at all. Why? Think about it. The trip that the Baal Tshuva has to go through, self, again, it's all self, to having experienced the pleasures. I mean, if somebody is sinning, they're obviously doing it for a reason. They're getting pleasure out of it. Going from the simple pleasure of not having to walk, you drive, to the pleasure of eating foods that are not kosher, to the pleasure of illicit or improper sexual relations. And it doesn't have to be consummated. I'm not talking about adultery necessarily, but even a casualness, a touching, interactions, they are obviously pleasurable, and that's why we do them. To then set that aside, overcome the feelings that you had and the pleasure that you got from doing those things, making the resolution going forward, regretting what you did, making the resolution going forward, being confronted with the same challenge, and overcoming that. I think we can all see and understand how that takes you to a higher level than somebody who may have been tempted but never went through that experience of experiencing the pleasure of sin and then being able to sincerely pull themselves away and move to Kedusha. It's an accomplishment. So I'm not going to get into the wording. I can read it to you, but as most of these songs, it takes interpretation to understand and know the references that she's making. And then for 20 years under Devorah and Barak, let's see if we can go that far. Now, just before I open up to any questions or anything else, we then have the story of Cicero's mother. Remember Cicero, the great general, who now had a stake through his head and was dead? See if you know what this is about. We're talking about Cicero's mother sitting at the window, wondering, where is he? You know, he should be back by now from the battle. And the people with her are saying to her, don't worry. He's obviously, let me see the exact language, because it's wild. It's wild. Cicero. Here we go. As part of her song, Tevorach Minoshim Yael, the wife of Chever, Eshes Chever Hakini, the wife of Chever the Kini, Minoshim Ba'al Tevorach, by women in the tent will she be blessed. Mayim Shal, Cicero asked her for water. Cholav Nasana, she gave him milk. The Sefer Ladirim Ikrivu Chemo, in a stately saucer, she presented cream. Yada la yoser tishlachna, she stretched her hand to the peg. V'yamina la halmos amelim, and her right hand to the laborer's hammer. Basically used a pile driver, the kind of mallet. Bahoma Sisra Mechake Rosho. She hammered Cicero and then severed his head. Umachatza V'chofa Rakoso, pierced his temple. Bein Raglea Kara, between her legs he knelt. Nafal Shachad, and he lay there. Ben Ragrilla Kar Nafal, at her feet he knelt, and then he fell. Where he knelt, there he fell, vanquished. Basha Kara Shanafal Shodu. Biata Chalonish Gefa V'Yatsev. She doesn't say who, but he says through the window she gazed. Ain't Isra Biyad Aska. Sisera's mother. Cicero's mother was standing by the window. Matua Echaru. Why is his chariot delayed? Pami Mar Kvosov. Why is his chariot late? Chasma Surasea Tanena. The wisest of her ladies answer her. Es he toshiv amarehela. And she too offers herself responses. Halo yimtsu yechalko shalol. Are the troops not finding and dividing their loot? Rachem rachamimum l'rosh gever. A comely captive, two comely captives for each man. Shalol. Rachem rachamatayim l'rosh gever. Booty of colored garments for Cicero, booty of colored embroidery, colored doubly. May all your enemies be those. So that's what they were saying to her. And we are told that she cried. Cicero's mother cried. Now let me ask you to tell me, why is this so? Well, first of all, when do we learn and hear about Cicero's mother crying, and what do we get out of that? Anybody? Why is Cicero's mother's crying significant to us? Think. When do we talk about this? And the answer is Rosh Hashanah. What's the link to Rosh Hashanah? Anybody? The answer is Kriyas Shofar. The blowing of the shofar is supposed to be, and we learned from it, what happened with Cicero's mother. The tekiah is a long cry. A shivarim is supposed to be bursts of whimpering, as it were. And the teruah, the 9 chops, is the kind of quick crying where you can't catch your breath. That is a teruah. The shofar, the crying of the shofar, is supposed to be learned this from, and we do mea kolos, 100 kolos. We blast the shofar 100 times on Rosh Hashanah.
I have a question, Isaac. Why are we showing homage to Cicero's mother in that way by blowing the why? Because she was
honoring her. We're not honoring her. We are learning.
Her crying?
We are copying, yes.
Okay.
We are copying in terms of a cry. The shofar is supposed to be a cry from us. And there are different kinds of crying. You have a long cry, a wail, as it were. Then you have you have to go through a cry. I'm sure if you recall a crying fit that you may have once had, and never should you have needed to. But the point is, you have a long cry, and then you have a shorter cry, and then you have the very short one where you can barely catch your breath because of your crying. And those are the three sounds that the shofar is supposed to emulate. Not Cicero's mother. We're not honoring Cicero's mother, but while we can acknowledge her pain, but we can use her example of, in her case, obviously.
A mother losing her son is what you're saying.
Right. Even though he was a big shot general, she's saying, "Where is my boy?" And they're saying, "Don't worry, he's playing with his friends, he's killing Jews, he's having a good time." But she was still standing there. She obviously felt something inside. Something was wrong. He was not coming home on time. And they're saying that's because they won so much, they're partying, but we learn from here the pain. I mean, you can obviously recognize the pain, fine. She was an evil whatever who enjoyed watching the Jews die, and her son is the big general who's killing them all. But on some level, you can still understand the pain of a mother waiting for her child to come home, and he isn't there.
Okay, thank you.
And that's one thing that even Dvorah in the Shira talks about, the pain of the mother, but Baruch Hashem, we were saved from him. And I think that would be a good place. Let me just see if there was anything else here I had on. Nothing except that, again, you had, let me do this. I wanted to put in the chat every one of the handouts that we had, including this one. Well, this one I just put. So you should be able to copy the map from the chat, I believe. Let me see, this is this. Thumbnail, video, small active speaker. Okay, here is the chat. I put up Eretz Yisrael, and if anybody didn't have any of the other ones, I can put it here now. Yoshua and Shoftim. And the next one, the Kovim. And here's the chart. I may have duplicated it here, but I wanted to make sure you got it. So basically, you have all the handouts that I had created for this course so far, with today included in Eretz Yisrael in biblical times. Any other questions, thoughts?
Which business? Our business. It says, yeah, it says revenue.
Who do we have to mute? Okay. We still have Eretz Yisrael here. Any questions? Any thoughts? But I thought just looking at the map in terms of understanding the positioning of where people were, this map does not emphasize enough the
What?
surrounding countries. but it should give you, and here, if you want, if you blow this up, you can actually, they're very good with it. This is the Lubavitch map. This is done by Merkaz in Yoneh Chinuch. It's done many, many years ago. But you can then blow up and see each area and where Anathot, where Yirmiyahu was born, Gibeah, where King Shaul made the capital, Ramah, the different cities that the Shoftim talk about. Okay. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Want to just do a Dvar Torah? I don't want to get into Gilad yet because it's going to be a longer story, and I'd rather save it, Gideon, for tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'd like to do Gideon, Yiftach, who was a terrible story, a horrible story, and Shimshon, with the three major shoftim of the ones that we had. Let's see. We're up to Devorah now. Tomorrow we're going to do Gideon, Avimelech, these guys with the small letters, with three minor shoftim. You can see very few years. We were really told almost nothing about them except their names. And then, well, you have some evil stuff. Some of these guys, unfortunately, were going through terrible. Now here, you're missing a zero. Mr. Resnick pointed it out. This should be 2830, 2810, 2690, 2650. In terms of the years, you have to add a zero. And the main story tomorrow will be a little bit of Gideon, Yiftach, and how you have to be careful what you promise before you go out and do something. And then the story of Shimshon in terms of a very troubled guy who married out, also intermarried. And the story of him and Delilah we know about from popular culture, but we can see a little bit from the Navi in terms of the way it's described. Okay, we have anything else? I'm sorry? Talking to me, or this is background noise? Sounds like background noise.
I believe it's background.
It is background? Okay. I haven't run enough classes to automatically learn what is background. Rabbi Smith is an expert. He just glances up and he knows exactly what to do. I am barely starting as a student. Yes. Oh, I got a good question. When is the longest possible Shemona Esrei said? You know what Shemona Esrei is, the 18 blessings. It can't be a Yontif and it can't be Shabbos. Because the weekday Shemona Esrei has 19 blessings. The Yontif ones or the Shabbos ones have only 7 or 3 or 5. So it cannot be Yontif. When is the longest possible Shemona Esrei? This is trivia more than anything else. I would expect the men to...
It has to be Yom Kippur. No?
Oh, wait, you're talking about... Yeah, I guess you're right. I meant more of the weekday. Forgive me.
Oh, I don't know.
I did not phrase that question correctly. You're absolutely right. In terms of the weekday Shemona Esrei, we have different editions that we do sometimes. Ritzei, Yalav V'Yavo, Alanisen. What is the longest possible weekday Shemona Esrei? I'm sorry. And the answer is nobody else. Last night. Why was last night the longest possible Shemona Esrei, weekday Shemona Esrei? Well, we'll go through what we ended up adding to the regular Shemona Esrei.
It has to be because it was Shabbos and because it was the
Well,
Hanukkah.
okay, Hanukkah, we have Alanisim. Motzai Shabbos, it's Saturday night. You have Atachon Antonu. Added after the very first bracha after Hakel HaKadosh, Atachonin L'Adam Das, and that's what we insert Atachon Antonu. So you have Atachon Antonu for Saturday night. You have Alanisim for Hanukkah. You have Yala V'Yavo for Rosh Chodesh. Today is Rosh Chodesh. The Motzai, Shabbos, Hanukkah, Rosh Chodesh, what's that? But there's one more that makes it even longer. By 2 words. Last night is when we start saying the same Tal Umatar. In the middle of Shemona Esrei, there's one Baruch Aleinu Hashanah Hazos. We have either the same Baracha or the same Tal Umatar Levracha. Last night was the first time, December 5th. The evening of December 5th is the first time that you switch to the same Tal Umatar. So instead of the same Baracha, you're saying the same Tal Umatar Levracha. That throws 2 more words in. On a regular, even Motzoi, Shabbos, Hanukkah, you don't have, Rosh Chodesh, you may not have. Trivia. What can I tell you? Jewish trivia. It works good in the yeshivas. Very good. We are at 11. Any comments? Any questions? Are we having fun?
Nice class, Isaac. Nice class.
Well, thank you very
enjoyed
much.
it. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did. We missed you Friday.
I was at the, the program at the
Okay.
temple in Surfside.
Baruch Hashem.
So,
Yeah, I couldn't make it. I wanted to go down to Menachem's Hanukkah party. I was stuck. That's why you see me with the monocle. I had 2 cataracts removed.
oh my goodness.
Complications from the surgery. So I was going up for one of my final visits. I started racing down. Menachem said, yeah, we'll be here probably till about 3:30, but they told me I wouldn't get there till 4.
No.
So I had to miss it. With the Sufganiyot, good.
I made an audio of a little bit of his speech and also of some of the music. I can send it to your, as a text into your phone if you like.
Please do. I would love
Yeah.
to hear it.
Yeah, it's only 2 minutes of each, but Rabbi Smith was impressed when I told him what I did. But his daughter helped me do it. So
I'm impressed. Okay.
yeah.
I'm learning what an amateur I am with a computer. In 1988, I had one of the first IBM ATs. A friend of mine worked for Morgan Stanley, because
Wow.
then only the big brokerage firms.
Right.
It's like $6,000 for this box. This
Yeah.
does about 300 times more than that machine did. What? We are fortunate to live through so many changes.
Yes.
Somebody asked, what's the most important skill? For young people, what would be the most important skill to learn? And Yuval Noah Harari, who's, I think, a manuvel, but a very smart guy, basically says he's a historian, Israeli historian that also talks about the future. He says the most important skill will be the ability to reinvent oneself. That things are changing so quickly in so many different areas. Flexibility, the ability to switch from one career to another if necessary, or one situation to another.
I have to interrupt you because I have had several different careers, and I always said I can probably do anything physically and mentally as long as I'm given a chance. I mean, I went from prototype setting and graphic design to being a bartender, to being a mother, and to being having a wonderful son that follows Judaism, and had a beautiful wedding recently.
Baruch Hashem, Mazel tov.
And he's yeah. So I'm very blessed. Hashem has blessed me more than I can even imagine.
And I feel exactly the same way. I've spent a lot of the last 2-3 years basically reflecting, rather than wallowing in pity or misery. I always say the same. I've said this for years and years and years. Well, I used to say something else. I used to say as a young guy that there's nothing in life worth worrying about for more than 20 minutes. And people will say, what do you mean? I say, okay, think of something terrible that happened to you 5 years ago. I mean, something terrible. You thought the world was ending and it was miserable and da-da-da-da-da. Look back now. Was it so bad? Did you get anything out of it? Was there a different angle to it? I said, I figure that exercise takes me about 20 minutes to go through. So anytime I am confronted with something that is new and different and miserable, it's basically a variation on this too shall pass. And the stuff is going to hit you anyway. The only question is, are you going to be smiling through it, or are you going to be miserable through it?
It's up to us. It's up to us to do the best we can under the circumstances, no matter.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Good. Anyone else? Wonderful spending Sunday morning with you. I wish you a wonderful, great week. A guten Chodesh.
Sei gesund.
And a Freilich Hanukkah. Tonight's the last night.
Right.
Zos Hanukkah. This is the big deal.
Yes.
The final night of Hanukkah is when all the miracles happen for us. May they happen for you and your families.
Thank you.
Amen.
To everybody. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.